when you approach things from a holistic standpoint, you are doing everything maternal led,
Yeah.
meaning you are listening to your gut and you are taking aligned action with that gut feeling.
Good morning and welcome to In the Know with KO. I'm your host, Kristen Adams, also known as KO. And today I have a super exciting, extremely timely episode with my dear friend who is literally going to give birth. I'm not going to say any minute now, but any hour or day now. So without further ado, I'd like to actually reintroduce. She was my second guest on the podcast show, Eleana. Welcome back.
Thank you, Kristen. Yes, we are 39 weeks and 2 days and
Woohoo!
counting.
Yes.
Super excited to be back here with you in the know with
Yes.
KO.
I thank you so much. So, for everyone watching, if you haven't caught on yet, we're talking about the fact that she's about to pop. And that's why we're doing this via Zoom instead of in person here in the studio for safety reasons. And that was probably a good choice because I'll tell you what, the traffic on the way here today, that would have put you in labor. It was no
Yes.
fun. It was no fun. The timeliness of our discussion is so super special because I was thinking about this yesterday, Eleana. We're recording this today, but by the time the episode drops, you'll be listening and watching it with your baby girl in your arms. What?
My gosh. I'm so excited.
It's
I
so
can't wait.
exciting. So, brief update for anybody who doesn't know our backstory from episode 2, when I first introduced you to the audience. We met because my husband and I are renting one of your properties from you and your husband. And the day we did the walkthrough at your home that we're renting, we just immediately kicked off a really special friendship, and we started getting together for dinners and wine right away. And then the kids met one another, and we even met out of town. And we've been a part of milestones and celebrations together, and our friends are meeting one another. And, you're getting to be part of my family and friends, and vice versa. And I'm so excited about that because, we went from a business transaction and we also, and we had kicked off a business, by the way. We were the junk babes for a hot minute. And, a successful entrepreneur knows when to start and when to exit, right? So we had to make a shift there, but it's worked out because now we're on to greener pastures and things are changing. So I just think it's so exciting because now we can have so many fun mom discussions too, right?
Yeah, I know. Becoming a second time mom is really surreal to me,
Yeah.
in how I've been, just equipped going into it this time around. And now that I have a community of mom friends
Yes.
versus going into it, where you're starting to form that. But now that I have that established, I really have a better understanding. And I know it's going to be challenging. My toddler, I have a 2-year-old son. He's already been putting me through the ringer the last couple of weeks here. But it's really great to go through it with your tribe,
Yeah.
knowing that you're not alone, you have a village, and motherhood has changed so much over the last several decades that we don't have to go through it alone. There's so many resources available and support available to us through our community that we don't have to
100%.
die and asking for help or receiving when someone does offer it. Like you offered help and I said, I'm not going to say no. I know better to accept help when it's given because people also love to help and they want
Yes.
to be part of that.
So you're right. And I think that, having your tribe and creating that village of support is so critical. And I know I'm guilty of not accepting help or knowing when to ask for it. And that's why I was like, listen, acts of service is so super important to me. It's how I love on people. And I was able to offer that to you. And I offer that to anyone who is, having a baby or going through a difficult time, whether it's something you're celebrating or a challenge you're navigating, so this is kind of a perfect segue, Eliana, because there's different types of moms. And I think it's pretty special that you and I are both not only biological moms, but we're also stepmoms. And that's also a very unique role. And I'm excited to share some of that journey together. But more importantly, what we have in common is our outlook on healthy motherhood position. And I say that like how you are approaching this pregnancy, not even compared to your pregnancy with me, Hallie, but more so the way you're preparing your body and the things that you've learned. I would love for you to just take a minute and share with everyone the way that you are really dialing into how nature intended for you to have your baby.
So good. Yeah. And I realized that, everyone's at a different point in their journey and how much they're capable of holding in terms of their bandwidth and their capacity for. And I do believe in God's perfect design of how babies are made, how babies are developed, how babies come out, how we then feed our children, for the first 6 months to a year of life afterwards. And we don't have to tamper with that. We just need to educate ourselves and trust it. And I've really been surrendering to all of that and understanding, okay, so if I don't have to tamper with any of it, if I don't need to go down the path of intervention because I have, a healthy foundation, right? It's all about where you're starting from. So I do have a healthy foundation where I'm not in a high risk for intervention or anything like that. I do plan on breastfeeding. I do believe in the natural process of that. So how can I just further support those things to ensure that, I make it the most successful, version possible, from labor to understanding, okay, the mechanics of it, which I did the first go. And I did have a very fast labor with my son, which was amazing. It was extremely intense. So this time around, yes, I like another fast labor, but how to manage that intensity a little differently and tuning in and surrendering to God's word and knowing that, baby and I are working together, that we are a team, and together she will come out beautifully as I am smiling. Literally, I tell myself that, and I will accept nothing less.
Well, I sincerely hope that you have that same, somewhat fast and seamless delivery. Obviously we don't always get exactly what we wish for in those circumstances, but I do believe in the power of the mind and spirit and your soul really connecting with your body. And I know for me, I also, so when I had my first son, I wasn't planning on a natural delivery, but it actually worked out that way. I did originally think that I was going to do an epidural and pain management and such, and I progressed so quickly and so well. They were like, they encouraged me. My midwife at the time, she's like, listen, she's like, I really think you can do this. Let's just push through. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so scary. And I'm so grateful that I did. And I know, this is not to shame anyone or criticize anyone that doesn't make that decision, because like you said, there are very different circumstances. There's no one size fits all, and everyone has to do what's best for them. But I have really, I'm not having any more children, but I love the idea that I have lots of friends who are, and I love the idea of sharing the things that you've learned, because I've learned even watching what you've been doing. And I am so excited about the way you're choosing to approach it. So when I had my second son, after going through that first experience, I was intentionally going into it saying, don't want the epidural. I don't want to do pain management. I'm going to dial in. And I was able to really, I was center focused. I was able to really, my brain was able to tell my body, okay, this is what's happening, and I wasn't in like a panic mode. I was very calm, and I was in a good environment and working, cooperatively. It's Friday, I can't talk. Cooperatively with my midwife, we created that birthing plan, and I was able to proceed with that. Now, the only difference I did make was at the very last minute, I begged for an epidural because we anticipated DJ being approximately 7 pounds, and he was closer to 10. So
Difference.
Yes. So I did make a last minute request, and they almost did not fulfill that request because they were like, you're in active labor. We do not typically come in at this point to do the epidural. So they said, okay, we're going to bring in some medical professionals to monitor you. And if you can show us that you can get through X amount of minutes of staying perfectly still through your contractions, we will consider calling the doctor and administering an epidural. And it was almost too late. I did what they asked, but it was almost too late because by the time it kicked in, I was already in active labor and we were pushing, and it never actually even kicked in. So I ended up going that route anyways. And I'm so glad because honestly, it was the healthiest for both me and for my babies. And I recuperated so much faster. You know, like you said, the body does amazing things. We are literally created and designed to do this, right? And if you allow your body to do those things and not complicate it unnecessarily, you are 100% right. And I would love for you also to talk about some of these natural ways you've been
Yeah.
preparing with oils and foods and
Yeah, I have gone down the rabbit hole this time, and I will say it's amazing to have, the support of a spouse who, for the first time we agreed I would deliver in a hospital. And I said, okay, that's fine. You get the hospital, I get the midwife and doula, and that's how we did it. For the second one, I would like us to be more open if all goes well to an alternative place. And we decided on a birth center for my second. And so automatically, it was great because when we did a tour, it was the owner who gave us the tour. It wasn't just the midwife or a nurse practitioner. It was actually, he was another gentleman who saw eye to eye with my husband and could really talk to his fears and concerns if anything were to go wrong. And so from the get-go, he was at ease, which makes everything so much easier going into it, right? Just to set that tone. Um, and so, I kept my form of exercise the same. I didn't shift or change anything. I chose jogging. Now that I have a 2-year-old, it was a little bit more challenging for me to get to the gym with my current schedule. So I chose to take him in the stroller and we would jog a couple times a week. And I gave myself that just non negotiable twice a week. Keep something in your routine consistent as far as movement goes. And of course, incorporate stretching. And as time went on in the pregnancy, I focused more on the pelvic and hip stretches to maintain that mobility and flexibility there.
which is important for obvious reasons. I will tell you, I am, being a former ballerina and dancer, I had the ability to connect with certain muscles of my body and movements in certain ways. So there was some muscle memory. I was
Mhm.
hoping and praying that my muscles did not have Alzheimer's, right? So they did remember, and thankfully they bounced right back into where they were supposed to be. But you are right. And I think that it's important for moms to be, whether it's their first, second, third, whatever number baby, to use those muscles and body parts to their advantage, right? In preparation of how they're going to need to be set up, right?
You want to create a regimen that isn't, so far that it's unobtainable to maintain consistency with, but that it's also, doable for you. If the weather is off that day or you're having an off morning, that, it's not going to change the consistency. Like I did twice a week, and although that was the bare minimum, I did sometimes did more. And that's kind of what you want, right? It's that like positive incentive, right? But if I told myself minimum 4 times a week and I didn't make that cut, that would be very discouraging. So that's, you have to know how your brain works and what works for you in that regard. As time went on and I was on my walks, I would listen to specific podcasts or music. A lot of times it was meditation music on my walks because that was my only alone time other than my son's nap time or in the evening, but that I could really just drop in and visualize my baby and establish, like you said, that mind to muscle connection, but that mind to baby connection. Because the more times you do that throughout your pregnancy, the stronger of a bond you are creating before your baby even arrives. So if you know the gender, if you know the name, if you've been, praying for her or his conception and for them to be in your arms, just continuously visualizing that and pondering that and meditating and praying on that, it's only going to help you further when you're in labor and then of course thereafter in bonding with baby.
Well, let's talk for a moment about that a little deeper. So, first of all, my husband and I were so honored to have been present for your gender reveal. I just have
Yeah.
to share this with everyone for a moment. I like to bring in some outside things really quick to just side note how awesome your husband's reaction was to finding out that you were having a girl. Dave and I will never forget his excitement. I mean, he was literally, I mean, when you give a description of someone who is literally over the moon, elated, uncontrollably excited, he was literally leaping, jumping, shouting. I mean, it was like the most beautiful response, having all boys, right? Having all
He
boys.
has 3 boys, and his oldest is 26. So this girl of ours is literally 26 years in the making for him.
That's
Um, and I will say that when we posted the video on our social, I mean, it was just for us and our family and friends, right, to share the news. And literally, it caught so much fire it garnered over a 1.5 million view and people that also felt that
Wow.
reaction and that joy and that excitement. I mean, it
Well,
was crazy.
I think it's great that you guys were able to capture that also. I mean, there's lots of gender reveals that we see, but to have been present for that but getting back to what your point was about bonding with that baby and also creating the right mindset for yourself as a mom. Well, again, whether you're a first-time mom or, this is your 10th baby, there's still levels of stress, worry, concern, things that if you don't
Right.
keep you need to keep your mind at ease. And whether you are the CEO of the house or CEO of a company, or you work for a company, you work part-time, full-time, no matter what it is, I've done it both ways. I've become a mom while working 50 to 60 hours a week, and I've become a mom while working the same amount of hours but from home.
Yeah.
And because I never want to discount the role of being the CEO of the house, and I don't even refer to myself as a stay-at-home mom anymore because I'm not just that. That's our
Yeah.
primary role, but supporting our husbands and the businesses that we collectively own and, making sure everyone is where they need to be and supporting him so he can do what he does. But, in order to do that, whether you're pregnant or when the baby does come, I think that's something that we all need to continue to do, Eliana, as far as having that time, whether it's 5 minutes or an hour, whatever you can give yourself throughout the week. You're right. Set that time aside just for you to get your head straight, right?
I even do that in the evenings. I've noticed, a lot of times we wind down on our phones, we wind down with the show.
Oh, yeah.
And lately I've gone up with, a little cup of tea and I will sit there and I don't want to be on my phone anymore. I don't want to look at a screen anymore or the TV, nothing. I just want to sometimes be in silence or have a little meditation music on to calm my system down. And I will just sit there with my eyes closed, allowing my brain to close out the tabs of the day. You know, whatever our role is in that capacity, we have so many random thoughts going on of
Well, you're right.
things we have to
These are
accomplish.
not good. These are not good. These screens, the blue screen, what it does to your eyes and your mind and your
It keeps the brain in the processing mode. Whenever you have too many tabs open on your computer, you start to hear your computer overwork and
yeah,
it's telling you, please close a couple of tabs for me. This is overdrive.
yes.
So our brain does the same thing. And, I did that last night and I noticed that within 15 minutes, I was ready to go to sleep. And it was amazing. I didn't need to look at my phone again. I just turn off the light, turn off, my music, and that's it. I was out.
Yeah.
And so many of us have a hard time doing that. Now, going back to, continuing the ways I've been preparing, um, that's big when it comes to having children and knowing how to turn your brain off because you're so overly stimulated, just from your kids and, a newborn, that how do you just relax yourself without um, continuing to keep the processor running,
Well,
right?
it's
So that
hard
was
to
one of
do
my
because
things.
as moms, the husbands carry everything on their shoulders while the moms carry everything in their hearts. And
Mm.
that is something that I've found personally is so hard to let go of. So, can you share some of the ways that you have naturally, holistically approached those, as well as any symptoms that you've had throughout your pregnancy? Are there any natural ways that you've been able to remedy any discomfort?
Yeah. So a lot of it is staying hydrated. I drink almost a gallon of water a day, and I do incorporate at least one electrolyte in my day because just water alone doesn't absorb as well as with a little pinch of salt or lemon, or an electrolyte packet.
Right.
I've also maintained my protein levels with red meat. Mainly, my diet consists of like 90%, 95% red meat. And the little wiggle room is for my men in the house who I feel bad they're going to be stuck with red meat all the time. But that maintains your iron levels, which has helped me not have any headaches. And I did notice that when I went off my regime, I would get headaches. I would be very dehydrated in my mouth, which if you already feel dehydrated, um, one day's worth of drinking water and hydrating isn't going to fix it. 2 or 3 days is how you're going to rehydrate the body over time. Um, Getting proper rest and actually napping midday, which is so hard to do when you feel like the last thing you can do is sit down and just rest. But that is still doing something for all my doers out there. Um, Stretching is really big. When I'm putting my son to sleep at night, he likes me to sing him a song. And as I'm singing him the song, I'm actually on the floor doing my stretching and my movement. So I do incorporate habit stacking where if I'm doing one thing and I know I can do another simultaneously, I'll do it. I'll take it, because we only have so much time in our day. So it's really just maximize that time. Um, and uh, let's see, food consumption, keeping stress down. I know that's really hard, but talking to people that you love and that make you feel good and happy, and knowing how to unapologetically set boundaries otherwise and really step into that. Because when you approach things from a holistic standpoint, you are doing everything maternal led,
Yeah.
meaning you are listening to your gut and you are taking aligned action with that gut feeling. And it's the best place to be because you are living from the inside out. You're not letting external factors concern you in the way that you're making your innate decisions. You know what's right for you and your baby. And as you've been building that bond all throughout, that's what's going to take over
Right.
versus the fear,
I think you're
right?
right about everything you said. And most importantly, the last part of what you were saying, you know your body. And we can give one another advice all day long, but what works for me may not necessarily work for you. But I do love all of the lists of things that you have done. And I think that, we anyone listening that's going through pregnancy or planning to go through pregnancy, they can utilize this as advice and then alter it to
Mhm.
accommodate what works for them, for their family, for their babies. And, I think it's also really wonderful. I have to throw this in there as well. I think you and I both share the same love of showing up for the people that we care about and loving and supporting them, because it does something for us. Like anytime I feel like I'm in a little bit of a funk, I immediately will try to think of something nice to do for someone in my family or a close friend, because when you show up for someone else, it gives you natural dopamine, and it helps you in a healthy way
Yeah.
mentally. And I really appreciate, I just want to throw this out there, how you showed up for me when I had an event, and that magazine in Fort Lauderdale featured a photo of me with a little bit of my story, and you and your husband came out and joined my family and I, and that meant so much to me, because I know when you're pregnant, it's not as easy to get out and about and get dressed up and go do things, right?
Yeah, it's not, but you make time for the people that matter to you, that are important to you. And
That's part of the medicine, though, for yourself. That's why I'm saying, like, I want people to understand that, not everything has to come from an outside source. A lot of it is
it's not.
it's all from within, right?
I do want to mention one other thing that has helped me in times of overstimulation and needing just that moment to self. Someone asked me this recently, and one of the things I do is I actually will go outside, whether it's walking the dog or my son is playing or just needing a moment, and allow the sun rays to absorb on my face and let it energize my body and just take that moment. Sometimes getting outside and shifting the environment does so much for you that when you then go back inside or whatever it is that you were doing, it just hits that reset button. And oftentimes I do that with my son when I say, okay, we're going to go outside and have a conversation. It's not to go outside and give him a spanking, it's to go outside and just reset the environment. And then we go back in.
That's great. I remember when my first son, Dylan, who is now 24, when he was a baby and he had a hard time, I learned something that I was then able to do with his brother, DJ, when he was born. When he was having a really fussy time or just completely uncomfortable during the day, I would just take him outside. And whether, we sat in the grass together on a blanket or we went for a walk together, you're right. It helped him, it helped me, and then we would go back inside. And then if it were the evening time, I wouldn't necessarily like go out too far, but I would still try to at least get a little bit of fresh air on the porch, or maybe open the window for a little while. You're right. There's something about fresh air, fresh oxygen, the sunshine on your face, the feeling of the grass under your feet or sand at the beach, whatever it is. Those outside elements are medicinal in themselves, right? And how about, I know you've used some oils recently. Are there some that you had particularly good luck with, or that you can share?
Yes. So I love incorporating like a peppermint or eucalyptus or citrus, one of those three. Peppermint is my preferred. And it's honestly better than coffee sometimes when you need a little bit of an energy boost. Now, as my pregnancy got later on, I stopped using the peppermint and switched to other ones because peppermint can induce some women. So I switched the scent, but essentially, you take a couple of drops, rub it in your fingertips, and when you breathe it in for at least 6 to 10 times, nice big deep breaths in, slow count out, and you let that oil seep into your nasal pathway and your air pathway into your lungs. It invigorates and revitalizes. And literally, I feel like my brain neurons, everything inside of me is turning on and being like amped up and saying, okay, it's time to, wake up
Yeah.
for the day. It's time to re-energize for the day. So I even started keeping a little essential oil in my car
Mhm.
if I was feeling tired, sluggish, dim, off, foggy, cloudy. And it just kind of helped me get a little boost in my day and a little pep in my step and make me feel like myself again.
So that's something that you don't need to be pregnant to implement into your life. And I will tell you,
No, not at all.
essential oils are something that I've always kind of known a little bit about, but I've jumped in headfirst, wanting to learn more. And my friend Kelly, who you've become friends with recently too, she has educated me a whole lot on the options of essential oils, whether it's being ingested or topical, using it medicinally. These are things that have literally been around for
Mhm.
over 2,000 years. And
Yeah.
why not tap into those resources and give them a shot and see? I've had
Yeah.
tremendous success with different types of oils, and I'm so excited to hear how you've incorporated that into invigorating your mind and your overall feeling, even for breathing purposes. I didn't even think about that.
Oh, it's incredible. I shared it with my husband's oldest son, even when he was in the military. He's in the military, but when he was in ranger school, as a technique he can utilize to help ground and center himself. I mean, there's so many different ways that you can incorporate it. Um, but moving along, I then focused on what food would be most helpful in my recovery for postpartum. And that's a lot of where I spent my energy, knowing that, okay, everyone focuses a lot on the labor, going up, when you're about having a baby, but you kind of forget about what life will be like postpartum and your food and what would be helpful for healing. So I got a lot of different things for, down there healing as the first couple of weeks set in. And when you have a natural delivery, does, like you mentioned, recover a little quicker, but it's still really uncomfortable. So the diapers and the wipes and the foam and the cooling pads and the witch hazel pads, all of those wonderful things. And then I started focusing on broths and soups because that's where, when I was reading, that is the most beneficial food as a new mother, where you have literally expelled everything out of you. The baby's out, the placenta's gone, and you are depleted now.
Right.
Well, you still have to feed your baby, so you have to replenish your own body. And so I actually went ahead and made my own bone broth. It took about 14 hours. Yeah, I would do it again, but now I know that I've done my first run, so now I know what not to do again.
Understandable, understandable.
Froze that, put it in the freezer. I made a bunch of different lactation, different snacks because my first time breastfeeding journey didn't last very long. My milk dried up within 4 months. And the very first month going back to work, within 3 weeks, it was gone. So now that life is a little different, very similar to your story and how my time has shifted, I think that'll have a huge play in cortisol being not as prevalent and having to create a freezer stash because I'm
Oh
going
yeah.
back to work. But nonetheless, I made lactation muffins, lactation little energy bites, stuck those in the freezer. I made
I
some.
I foresee a pre and postpartum book in your future. I mean, I'm just saying, like, this is a lot of great information here. I mean, you know, I think that even for me, like when I look back on both of my pregnancies, they were so far apart, but they were they were very different. I'm the same person, but each baby is different, your body is different. whether it's 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever, 13 in between pregnancies. But I remember how upset I was that I wasn't able to breastfeed longer. And one thing I really just want to encourage any of the moms that are listening when they're preparing to potentially have their baby or shortly after in that postpartum time, whether you breastfeed for 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, or you get a whole year, whatever it is, it's beneficial. And if for whatever reason, and I learned this from my midwife, if you're not able to continue breastfeeding for whatever reason, just continue to have that skin on skin time with your baby, because there's that connection and that closeness of, being able to hold them and with them being close to your heartbeat, right? And being able to feel that. So, obviously there's a tremendous benefit for both mom and baby if you can breastfeed. But I know for myself, even I wasn't able to do it for nearly as long as I had hoped, but I
Mhm.
still continue to try to keep that bond in whatever
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
And I know so many women who, contrary, know themselves enough to know that they don't want to breastfeed,
Mhm.
that know themselves enough that they prefer to schedule their delivery, knowing that that's what they have the bandwidth and the mental capacity for to maintain their well being so they can show up and be the best mother that they know to be for their baby. And there is no right or wrong way. Our children are going to grow up and be amazing human beings and contributors to society. It is what resonates and means the most to you and what makes you feel good from the inside out, knowing that you're making the best decision and choice for yourself.
Well, that's why I hope that conversations like this will become more common and more mainstream so that up and coming moms, just like you and many of my other friends and family, will hear things like this, and maybe it'll help calm down some of those nerves. So if they're first time moms or they didn't have a great experience the first time around, we're influenced by so many things on the outside, telling us what to do and how to do it. And I think that everything you shared, Eleana, was so helpful and so encouraging. And I want to thank you so much for being transparent and sharing so many personal details about this journey so that we can encourage those other moms to share. And even if you're a grandparent or an aunt that's listening and you've got a mom to be in your family, share this with them and encourage them, lift them up, right? Just continue to be present for them any way that you can.
The best question you can ask is, how can I be there for you? How would you like me to show up for you? Because again, it gives the mother that empowered decision to say, this is how you can show up for me
Yeah.
instead of assuming. So thank you so much for having me on and sharing this part of my journey with you and your wonderful.
Oh, you're such a great part of our family now. So I'm so grateful that we were able to make this time before baby girl comes. Like I said, it blows my mind that the next time, we potentially talk, she's going to be arriving and then the podcast will air and she'll already be here. It's just, it doesn't even seem right because I remember we first learned that you're having a baby. But so for everyone listening, to be in the know with KO today is about supporting these moms and supporting yourself. This is the time to don't feel selfish. Give yourself grace and give yourself whatever you need, whether it's a nap, a donut, an apple. Like, just go with what feels good, but make sure that you're finding the balance and listen to your body and prepare it the best way that you can. So, Eleana, thank you. And I will be sure to make sure we have a fabulous postpartum update when you are ready, if that sounds good to you.
Sounds great.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for listening. We appreciate it. Don't forget to offer a 5-star review. Share this episode from anyone who you think will love it and have a wonderful day.